Still not over the origin story of how Peeta fell for Katniss. It's adorable, but also kind of unhinged. If you've only seen the movie, I'm about to drop some major book lore on you. The story starts in the cave where Katniss and Peeta are staying together. It's after the feast, so it's when Peeta is better. He had his medicine shot that Katniss got for him. Katniss is thinking if she gets the romance going a little bit right now, they might get some food sent to them. Katniss prompts Peeta, bringing up how he said he'd had a crush on her for forever, and so she says, when did forever start? And Peeta begins the story of how he fell for Katniss. Peeta says, oh, let's see. I guess the first day of school, we were 5. You had on a red plaid dress, and your hair, it was in 2 braids instead of 1. My father pointed you out when we were waiting to line up. Mr. Mellark says, see that little girl? I wanted to marry her mother, but she ran off with a coal miner. Katniss does not believe Peeta when he says this. She's like, you're making that up. And Peeta's saying, it's true. Baby Peeta to his dad says, a coal miner? Why does she want a coal miner if she could have had you? And his dad says, because when he sings, even the birds stop to listen. And Katniss does know her dad was a great singer. She's shocked and moved that Mr. Mellark would say that. And Katniss is thinking to herself how she avoids music and singing because it reminds her too much of her dad. Peeta continues the story. The kids are in music assembly. The teacher asks if the kids know a specific song, the Valley Song. And Lucy Gray does sing that song in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's definitely in the books. I'm not sure if it's in the movie too. So in the story, baby Katniss is eager to sing this song. Her hand shot right up in the air. The teacher has her stand up on a stool and she sings the song for the class. Well, 5-year-old Katniss, Peeta said, and I swear every bird outside the windows fell silent. So her singing voice had the same power as her dad did. Katniss laughs when he says that. She's saying oh please. Peeta's arguing no, it happened. And right when your song ended, I knew, just like your mother, I was a goner. Katniss's mother couldn't help but fall for Mr. Everdeen, and Peeta couldn't help but fall for Katniss. Peeta says, then for the next 11 years, I tried to work up the nerve to talk to you. So in a way, my name being drawn in the reaping was a real piece of luck. Katniss has a real teen cute reaction to hearing this story. For a moment, she says she feels foolishly happy, but then confusion sets in. She thinks they're supposed to be making this romance up for the cameras, pretending to be in love, but there's truth in Peeta's story. Her dad's voice in the birds is true. She does remember singing the first day of school. She can't remember what she sang or what she was wearing, but she does know she had that red dress that Peeta described. And if the story Peeta is telling her is true, it would explain why Peeta went out of his way to give her bread, knowing he would get beat up by his mom. So after the story, Katniss is seriously wondering if everything is true then, how he feels about her. Katniss doesn't really know what to say now. She just goes, oh, you have a remarkable memory. Peeta says, I remember everything about you. And then he tucks a strand of hair behind her ear and says, you're the one who wasn't paying attention. Katniss says, I am now. Peeta says, well, I don't have much competition here. Peeta's riz is always there. So smooth. And Katniss feels vulnerable now. She wishes they were in private, that they weren't on camera, but she hears Haymitch's voice in her head saying, say it, say it. So Katniss says, you don't have much competition anywhere. And then she leans in to give him a kiss. Her imagining Haymitch egging her on like this, really, it just seems like a normal internal monologue that someone would have when you're gonna say something risky to your crush, versus oh, I'm only doing this because Haymitch would want me to. She was nervous to admit to Peeta that she liked him. Their lips have just barely touched when they hear a sound. They're worried someone's outside. Katniss goes to look, and she sees a parachute, and it's a whole basket of food. It's a feast. So Katniss did get what she wanted. She started this whole conversation with Peeta because she thought it would help them get food, and it did. But they also did have a big moment. Peeta just told her he'd been obsessed with her since she was 5 years old. It would be easy for this to sound creepy, but it doesn't. It's a very innocent, pure crush. He has a crush on her based on her singing voice. The fact that Peeta falls for Katniss based on her voice, a voice that is so powerful, everyone stops to listen, even the animals. Sure, Katniss was singing in that moment, but the overarching theme of her voice, Katniss's voice is her beliefs. It's what she stands for. She becomes the face and voice of a rebellion. She got a whole country to stop and listen. She's a force of nature. Her symbol is the Mockingjay. When Katniss said, if we burn, you burn with us, everyone was sad. And of course her voice is just who she is, It's not that Peeta fell for her because her face was so pretty or her eyes were so gray. He doesn't say anything about her appearance, just I noticed that your hair was in 2 braids and that you were wearing a little red dress. But what drew him to her was her voice. And of course that his dad pointed her out. So there's this whole backstory that ties Katniss and Peeta's families together. Mr. Mellark was in love with Katniss's mom. They both grew up in the merchant class. He he was a baker. Her family were apothecaries. Coal miners are part of the seam class, which is the poorer class. And seam as in like there's coal seams, which is why it's called that. And it's really sad that Katniss's mom, she broke the social norms. She married for love instead of status or money. And tragically, she loses her husband. And Mr. Mellark also seems to care for Prim. Mr. Mellark actually went and saw Katniss after the reaping in the time where family and people can go say goodbye to you. He brought her cookies and he promises that he'll keep an eye on the little girl, make sure she's eating, as in Prim. Katniss was familiar with Mr. Mellark because she would sell him squirrels on the regular. Katniss is still confused that Mr. Mellark would offer to look after Prim like this, but she writes it off as just like, people in town are fond of Prim. She's very sweet. People like her. Maybe that'll keep her safe. But really, Mr. Mellark is offering to look after the daughter of the woman he loved, or maybe still loves. It seems like once the Mellarks fall for someone, they're in it for life. Regardless, Mr. Mellark seems like a very caring guy. Him looking after Prim on his own is one kindness, and then also like assuring that to Katniss that he'll look out for her. That's also a huge kindness and somewhat of a relief to her. So thank you, Mr. Mellark, for weirdly pointing out the daughter of the woman you loved to your 5-year-old son. Little unhinged to do that, but thank you for that. I feel like Peeta would have noticed her anyway, but still.